I will call the June 17th board meeting to order. Since 5 p.m., the board has been in closed session to consider the following: discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by Section 2.06. The appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district. Security procedures, school building safety and security, and the use of personnel and equipment to respond to an actual, a threatened, or a reasonably potential danger to the safety of employees, students, staff, the public, or public property. And litigation, when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular district has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal. I will entertain a motion to come out of closed session. A motion and a second are heard. All those in favor? Aye. Good evening, and welcome to the June 17th business meeting of the Board of Education. Our mission is to educate students to be self-directed learners, collaborative workers, complex thinkers, quality producers, and community contributors. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Board members present this evening: Kristen Fitzgerald, Charles Cush, Paul Leong, Joe Kosminski, and Janet Yangrohr.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'd like to make a recommendation to the Board of Education. We have well over 50 student athletes who have given up a summer evening, and one of the driest summer evenings we've had in a while, to be here to be recognized, and I'd like them to have that opportunity to be recognized. So my recommendation, we don't keep them here any longer than they need to be. We flip the order of the agenda, let our student athletes be recognized, and then move into the bulk of our public hearing as well as the rest of the board meeting.
Okay, that sounds great. Everyone in? Yep. Okay, perfect.
This is an extremely exciting evening for us here in District 203 because it just speaks to the exemplary student athletes that we have in our school district, not only from an athletic standpoint, but also just from a citizen standpoint and how they represent this community when they compete on the state's biggest stage. And so I'm very grateful not only to them and their coaches for their accomplishments and their achievements as athletes, but more importantly in how they've represented this school district in our community on that state level. So tonight we have so many state champions to recognize. It's going to be a lot of fun for us. And we are going to begin with Jacob Rudder. So Jacob, if you want to come forward with Christina Hagenbaumer and Lindsay Greer. So Jacob won a gold medal at the Special Olympics competition held over the weekend of June 7th through 9th. Jacob won in the softball toss competition by throwing the ball 57.5 meters. And Jacob is joined by his coaches, Christina Hagenbaumer and Lindsay Greer. Congratulations. And then we're going to get some pictures, and if there's anybody here that wants to get a special picture of Jacob and his coaches, you're welcome to come forward once Ms. Mondini's done with her picture. Stay there. It's going to be like the paparazzi here in a second. Congratulations, Jacob. We're all proud of you. Okay, next, I'd like to invite Coach Dan Iverson from Naperville North to come forward. Unfortunately, repeat state champion Haley Bieber could not be with us this evening, but she won the state championship in the 300-meter low hurdles for the third consecutive year. Congratulations to Haley.
Yeah, obviously, I'm not Haley. Haley is on vacation until tomorrow, but anyway. Yeah, it's the third straight state championship. She was 7 times All-State. To win the 300 hurdles or any event in the state track meet 3 straight years is really remarkable, and she's been a wonderful athlete to coach. She's going to go on to Duke just a couple months from now, and really we're going to miss her, obviously, but she's been awesome. So.
Okay. Hey, I'd like to invite Principal Posey and Coach Goltz to come forward. I don't know if I have the power, but I'm going to declare this the soccer capital of the state of Illinois.
There we go.
As not only did the boys win for the third consecutive year earlier, but now we are here to honor the girls IHSA state champions. So with Coach Goltz, we are so proud of your accomplishments. It was such a fun game to watch. So Coach, if you want to introduce your athletes, we'd be happy to recognize.
First of all, thanks for having us. Fantastic night for the kids. Just a real quick recap of the season. Finished 15, 5-4, 8 wins going into the playoffs, and finished on a 7-0 run to win the state championship. And back-to-back nights, Friday and Saturday in shootout. And as Mr. Bridges said, an absolutely incredible experience over at North Central. And couldn't be prouder of the group to bring home the 4th state championship on the girls' side in Naperville North. So without further ado, Grace Archibald. Caitlin Castillo. Emily Dulick. Nora Fitzgerald. Ellie Gerner. Ellie Hip. Amanda Johnson. Taylor Kleiber. Jordan Leonard. Emily McGee. Hannah Martin. Leah Malloy. Katie Murphy. Katie is one of our senior captains this year. The second senior captain, Riley Riggs. Michelle Schabacher. Leah Shoemate. Paige Sylvester. And Maddie Thompson.
Once again, we're going to get a quick picture, and then if there are any friends or family who'd like to come up into this open area, once Miss Mondini is done and get a picture, you are welcome to do so.
What's your first, Dan?
All right, if I have the power to declare this the state soccer capital, it's also the state water polo capital. So after the 3rd time in 4 years, the Naperville Central boys team took first place. I'd like to invite Assistant Coach Steve LeClaire to come forward. So we will, Principal Weisbrook is here. I didn't see you there. Good to have you here, Bill. But again, congratulations, 3rd and 4 times. So if you want to introduce your athletes, we'll be happy to recognize them as well.
All right, we have Owen Cotto. Quinn Jasinski. Jonah Klein Collins. One of our captains, Luke Klein Collins. Mark LeBeau.
Dude, come on, you're right here. You're right here, come on. Just go this way. Come on, go around that way. You're good, you're good, you're good. That's all right.
Henry Mills. Spencer Rail. Our other captain, Bender Russo. Brad Sandberg. And Sean Stavlin.
Maybe make 2 rows, guys. Next year we'll bring a kiddie pool so you can jump into it with your certificates like you do at the state meet. All right, congratulations. Invite Principal Wiesbrook to rejoin me, and then the head track coach from the Naperville Central Boys track team, Steve Wiesbrook. Come on up. In your final season, congratulations. We'll have you introduce your state champions, please.
First of all, thank you for having us. It was an exciting season, and this is kind of a culmination of an awesome season. I had the pleasure to watch 5 or 6 young men become state champions in the 4x800 relay, and one of them in the individual 800-meter run. They ran the fastest time in the state during the indoor part of the season, and ran a new school record in the state finals 3 weeks ago at Eastern. I have a couple of assistants with me, Grant Bagance and Steve Stack. And then Aaron Benson, part of the 4x800 relay. He ran on Friday. Thomas Cotto, who ran Friday and Saturday. Patrick Julian ran both Friday and Saturday. Seth Klein Collins ran both Friday and Saturday. Jack Mocho could not make it tonight. He ran on the 4x800 relay at the sectional to get us to the state meet. And then Thomas Shogalis. And Thomas was also the individual 800-meter state champ. Once again, it was a phenomenal season, and thank you.
Congratulations, Coach Wiesbrook. We'll invite you and your assistant coaches to join your team up on the podium. Not a bad night or spring season for the Klein Collins family either, I might add. Again, congratulations. We are all very proud of each of you.
Okay. With that, I will call to order the public hearing regarding the proposed 2019-2020 Naperville Community Unit School District 203 budget. The Illinois statute requires the school district to adopt a budget by September 30th of each year. The process for adoption requires at least one public hearing after the tentative budget has been made conveniently available to the public for at least 30 days. The tentative budget was made available on May 17th, 2019, and the Board of Education passed a resolution establishing June 17th, 2019 at 7 p.m. for a public hearing. The board and administration have had a public discussion regarding the tentative budget prior to this evening's meeting. So I will provide an overview for our process. We will begin the hearing with comments by the administration. The administration's comments will be followed by public comment. And if you wish to make such a public comment, please sign up on the form. Public comment will be made in the order of the request, and individuals will be limited to 3 minutes. After public comment, the Board of Education will be invited to provide comment. The hearing will then be closed. So at this point, I will invite our superintendent and his staff to make comments.
I'm going to invite Chief School Business Official Mike Francis to make the majority of the comments on behalf of the administration. I'm going to just again walk through a timeline that is a part of his presentation, but just again to be clear, with the board and our community, that on May 6th, administration first presented a recommendation to the board on a tentative budget and established the date, and the board established a date of public hearing, which is this evening. On May 15th, Mr. Francis and I met with the Citizens Finance Advisors, presented them the tentative budget and to receive their feedback, which we shared with the Board of Education at the May 21st meeting. Tentative budget was put on display, as Ms. Fitzgerald said, on May 17th. On May 21st, we conducted a board workshop regarding the budget where the feedback from the Citizens Advisors was presented. On June 3rd, we continue to have budget workshops with the Board of Education, responding to questions that the board members had brought forward. This evening, we begin with our public hearing on the budget. And Mr. Francis momentarily will be making some comments regarding the recommended tentative budget, as well as some updates that has been made as a result of additional information we've gained over time, but in response also to questions from the board. So, Mr. Francis, I'll turn it over to you on behalf of the administration, please.
Sure, thank you. Don?
Yeah.
We've got an updated presentation tonight for the budget. Later on in the agenda is would be an item for adoption for the FY20 budget. Tonight we got just a brief overview of some of the changes that we made from the original version, as Superintendent Bridges said on May 6th, and I want to highlight those as part of this presentation. Before I get to that, I just wanted to reiterate a couple of the key points in this budget. It includes both of the tax abatements that the board adopted at the March school board meeting. The first one for $2.7 million on the 2008 bonds. That's the annual debt payment for the bonds that were issued in 2008 that was abated in this tax levy, as well as an additional $2 million abated for the aggregate extension. Those two abatements are actually reflective in the current tax bills. The superintendent really went over the timeline already, the last 6 weeks or so. Just one last point here. This is the last, today being the public hearing and the final piece of the puzzle, and you can see it's well before the statutory deadline of September 30th. So as I mentioned, there's a few changes from the original tentative budget that we put on display, presented to the board on May 6th and put on display. Just want to highlight what those are. On the revenue side, there's two changes. We've increased Title I income, estimated Title I income due to potential rollover and reallocation of Title I, And we've also correspondingly increased the expenses by the same amount. So those are really a wash on both increases to both revenue and expenses for Title I. The major change, which is still fairly minor, is a reduction in investment income. Over the last 6 weeks and after talking to our financial advisors, short-term rates have come down and they're projected to potentially go down throughout the rest of the year. So we took a little bit more of a conservative approach on investment income. If you remember, we have increased that budget quite a bit over last year's budget, so we're just bringing that down a little bit. Overall, anticipated revenue was decreased by $285,000. On the expense side, as I mentioned, there was an increase to Title I. We've also increased our property and casualty insurance. One of the items on the consent agenda is the adoption of our insurance for next year. Because we know the actual premiums, we've changed the budget to reflect those to actuals. So you'll see a change to the in the tort fund and the operation and maintenance fund to reflect that increase. The major changes come in these two areas in summer school and interscholastics. There was, upon some further review of the budget since we adopted it, or since we presented it in May, we realized that we had carried over a few items that were one-time items in FY19 that should have been carried over. We removed those from the budget, as well as noticing that we had double budgeted a few items in summer school, some salaries and some additional benefits we noticed that we had inadvertently doubled up on, and we've removed those from the budget also. Overall, we reduced the budgeted expenditures by just over $400,000 from the May version. So the following, the next few charts and graphs are just updates of those amounts. This is the same pie chart that you saw before, but it's been updated with those minor changes to both other local revenue and federal. Looking at revenue by fund, again, this table shows the difference between the FY19 current year budget and the FY20 budget and the dollar change and the percent difference. On the May version, that percent change in the lower right-hand corner was 3.21%. So it was we made a change of about 0.1% to the projected revenue for FY20. This table shows the same totals, but shows it broken up into different types of revenue that we're projected to get for the next school year comparing to the FY19 budget. The only changes on this slide would be to the other local, which is the primary, where investment income is the primary source of revenue in that other local revenue line, as well as there's an increase from the May 6th version in the federal line. This pie chart shows the changes, reflects the changes that I discussed for expenditures for all funds. And the next two charts show that what it looks like on a fund-by-fund basis. The major change came with a reduction in the education fund for the items I mentioned previously, as well as some minor increase in the operation and maintenance in the tort fund for the insurance, where our insurance bill gets partially paid. And then this final slide shows the budget broken out by objects, where if you compared it to the May 6th, there's a slight decrease in both salaries and benefits and supplies, a very minor increase to professional services. Overall, the budget is projected to increase by 2.7%. At the May 6th version, it was 2.85%. Again, just over $400,000 lower than the May version of the tentative budget. With that, I'll take any other questions that the board may have.
Actually, I have public comment on our next. Thank you for that presentation. That's wonderful. And what I will do is we will do public comment, and then the board will have comments and questions. So we've reached the point in our agenda for public comment. The Board of Education welcomes comments from the public at its meetings. Citizens who wish to address the Board of Education should identify themselves by name and home address. Comments by individuals shall be limited to 3 minutes. If the person is representing multiple individuals or a group, such person may be allowed to speak for 5 minutes. Issues raised during public comment will be taken under advisement by the Board of Education, but will not be discussed this evening. Issues raised during public participation may be added to future agendas or addressed by administrative staff. The superintendent is the board's designee to coordinate response to public comments, and will apprise the board accordingly. So at this point, I'd like to welcome Doug McGregor to address the board.
I don't have any particular say about numbers.
We have public comment a little later in the agenda regarding
That's why I
general.
was
Okay.
wondering why
Perfect,
it's called.
okay.
Okay.
Perfect,
all right.
thank you, Mr.
Okay, great. So has anyone else in the audience addressed a slip that they would like to speak regarding the public hearing on the budget? Okay. Then we will go on to board comments in item 4.03. Would anyone from the board like to make a comment regarding the budget? And then, of course, we will have the item for action later in the agenda. Charles?
First of all, I'd just like to say thank you to Dan and administration. There were lots of questions that we all had, and you guys have done a really thorough job in answering them. So I just wanted to thank you for that extra level of detail. I have to say that this budget cycle, it's my third one, I think. The amount of detail that you provided in the answers to the questions and the thoroughness of the information has been very good. So I just say thank you.
I'll also compliment our administration, superintendent, and our administration for their balanced approach. This budget provides necessary funding for areas of improvement and for continued growth, but also is responsive to tax. So we're very appreciative of that. And I want to thank also particularly Mike Francis for his work to answer our questions and then the continued review of the budget. It's exciting to see us come back with a tentative budget with changes, with reductions of $400,000 in spending. That's uncommon, and so thank you for that. They're great continuing to look at paring back where we can, so that we're able to make the necessary improvements to support all our students. For that. Any other comments? Joe?
I'd also like to thank thank you for the transparency through the whole process and posting all of our questions and your comments.
I did want to make that comment as well as a follow-up to Mr. Cush, and so it's not, well, just for the community, Mr. Cush, Mr. Kuzminski both referenced questions asked by the board and responses. Those are posted in board docs on both the May 21st and the June 3rd meetings, so you can see the level of detail in terms of questions asked, the fiscal oversight provided by the Board of Education and response by administration to those are posted in board docs for community's reference.
You have no additional comments? Then I will close our public hearing on our proposed budget, and then we will have our vote later in the agenda under action. Okay, so we have already gone on to recognition with 5.01 good news. So we've gone all the way through that whole entire agenda item. Now we have reached the point for public comment in our regular board meeting. As I have stated before, we welcome comments from the public. Citizens who wish to address the Board of Education should identify themselves by name and home address. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. If the person is representing multiple individuals or a group, such person may be allowed to speak for 5 minutes. Issues raised during public comment will be taken under advisement by the Board of Education, but will not be discussed this evening. Issues raised during public participation may be added to future agendas or addressed by administrative staff. The superintendent is the board's designee to coordinate response to public comments and will apprise the board accordingly. Okay, so we'll try this again. At this point, we will welcome Doug McGregor.
You want me to state my name and address? Doug MacGregor, 24 West 647 Springdale Drive, Naperville 60540. I'm here because of the article in the Daily Herald about the diversity and inclusion thing that's going. I believe it's $7,000 out of the budget. I know there's a new hire. I was at the focus group or whatever session at Compass Church. I sat with you, Kristen Fitzgerald, and I had a subsequent meeting with Mr. Bridges. And it is my opinion, based on my research, that this is a disaster in the making. Did you read the email I sent to you, to all the board members today? Did you read the Edina report? Did anybody on the
Yes,
board get an
The
email
board
from me?
did get an email and re-email, but remember, we won't be addressing the things that you mentioned here at the board meeting.
You can't even answer if they read it?
The section for public comment is an opportunity for you to address the board and provide comments to you. At a future meeting, they may have put on an agenda item or direct me to respond to you, but this is an opportunity to address the board with your
My
comments.
hope is that you could put the brakes on this new initiative before you vote to fund it. And that's not possible. So I'm just.
You can
I'm
address,
just
you can address the board, provide your comments, and they can take your comments under advisement as they vote later on in the board agenda.
All right, well, for everybody else here, a very similar program was done in Edina, Minnesota. I grew up there till I was 13. Edina was an older version of Naperville, known for its schools, its great housing, sports. It was a destination like Naperville. I'm in real estate. I can tell you that taxes are very high, and I see it all the time. People build these beautiful homes, and as soon as their kids are out, they put it up for sale because they can't afford, or they choose not to afford, the heavy tax burden. Cannot own real estate in Illinois. The taxes eat you up. So as a taxpayer, and based on what happened in Edina, after 6 years, it was an abject failure. They have record low kindergarten registration. People are moving. People are going to other schools, and property values are falling. If you want to address the achievement gap, you can't do it this way. I've got all sorts of data to prove it, and the conversations that I've had with members of this board, quite frankly, I believe they're making decisions in the dark. They have not heard of any of the people I'm talking about. And I thought it would be a little bit more of a discussion, but I implore you not to go down this road without all the facts, and I don't believe that you have them. I guess that's it.
Thank you for coming to speak to the board, and as a reminder, our superintendent will coordinate the response to public comment and will apprise us accordingly. Do I have any other slips of paper or additional individuals who wish to address the board? Okay. We will go to item 7 on our agenda. Item 7 is our monthly reports. Listed in board docs is our treasury report, investments, insurance report, and budget report. Does any board member have a question regarding our monthly report? All right, so we will go to our action by consent. I had the opportunity to review bills and claims on behalf of the board today with Joe, and the two of us met with our staff to go through all the bills and claims. And so I am pleased to move approval of warrant number 1016608 through warrant number 1017462, totaling $22,775,715.15 for the period of May 22nd, 2019 to June 17th, 2019. And I will move the following items from the consent agenda. Item 8.02, 8.03 board meeting minutes of 6:03 and 6:04. 8.04 property casualty, 8.05 hazardous crossing recertification, 8.06 IHSA boundaries, 8.07 four-year equipment lease, 8.08 bid for lunch tables, and 8.09 administrative and classified salaries. A motion, a second are heard. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Leong,
Aye.
Yangroor, Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Wanke, Kush,
Aye.
Kuzminski.
Okay, the motion passes. I will now entertain a motion for the board meeting minutes of 5:21. A motion and a second are heard. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Kush,
Abstain?
Leong,
Aye.
Yangroor, Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Kuzminski.
The motion passes. We will move to item 9, communications. Listed in item 9.01 are our Freedom of Information Act request for the public's viewing. I will now move to item 9.02, superintendent staff school report.
This time, I'd like to invite our Assistant Superintendent for Assessment and Accountability, Dr. Patrick Knowlton, to come forward to present on behalf of administration. Dr. Knowlton will be presenting 2018-2019 Performance Series Achievement and Growth Results in the areas of reading and mathematics, and talk to you a little bit about understanding the future directions. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Dr. Knowlton.
Okay, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here and share with you our annual assessment summary and update of our performance on the Performance Series assessment based on the 2018-2019 school year. Just want to recognize that the efforts and outcomes of this really have everything to do with the endless and relentless support that we get from parents, obviously our skilled staff, motivated students, and the community as well. So there's a lot of things that contribute to the success. As an outcome, I want to just share with you at the grade level and as well at the student group level how we did in terms of reading and mathematics with respect to growth and achievement, and talk a little bit about future directions for assessment in the upcoming 1920 school year. Just as a quick review for those of you who have heard this before, I apologize. Performance Series is an assessment that we've used for a number of years in this district. It's a benchmark assessment system. It's designed to be given 3 times a year. We give it in the fall, the winter, and the spring to students beginning in 2nd grade, and then through 9th grade for select 9th graders. We assess reading and mathematics, and this gives us a global sense of where students are relative to a national sample in reading and mathematics achievement. It also tells us whether or not students are on track to make expected or exceed expected growth. This first slide summarizes, as we've looked at in the past, the proportion of students that are at or above the national 50th percentile rank. So like we've talked about before, being at the 50th percentile rank or being above the 50th percentile rank isn't really a guarantee of proficiency as measured by the Illinois Learning Standards current IAR, or Illinois Assessment of Readiness. So this tells us generally how are we doing, what percent of students are at or above the national 50th in reading, and just keep in mind that a single percent on this, so if you see a gain or loss of a single percent, that's 11 to 13 students. And if you just sort of scan across the that chart, you can see general increases, nothing too dramatic, nothing going up majorly, nothing going down. 2nd grade really has to do with a norming process that occurred right before the 2018 school year. And that's not really substantiated by any other evidence or data sources that we're seeing a dramatic or precipitous decline in in reading achievement among 2nd graders. If you look at our IAR data, that doesn't bear itself out, nor does it as you see students taking it as 3rd graders the following year. This is a breakdown again of the proportion of students that are at or above the national 50th percentile rank. Just in general, our typical student is somewhere around the national 75th to 80th. So soak that in for a second. That's a remarkable level of achievement. That means half of our population is above the 3rd quartile. When you take a closer look at our data, around 25% of our students are at or above the national 90th. So this distribution of performance isn't really different than if you looked at national data. The Asian students being higher achieving than white, followed by Hispanic, Latino, and African American Black. Not excusing it, just saying that this profile of performance is reflected nationally as well. And it certainly highlights areas of, which we continue to focus our growth on achievement gap closing. This slide, like other slides you've seen in the past, looks specifically at English learner students, the percentage that are at or above national 50th, and generally you can kind of see an upward trend there moving along. Just go back and one thing I wanted to say about the this slide. Apologize. When you see a percent increase, depending on the group, a percent could mean fewer or lesser kids, right? It depends on our total student population. So, for example, In the case of African American Black students, a single percent is 4 students, right? So in the case of white students, a single percent is 54. So when you see percent increases, you're talking about different numbers of students making gains or declining. I just want you to keep in mind when you see that. This just shows you overall percentage, but increments of percent increase reflect different actual numbers. And that's true for any of these categories. This is the growth slide where we look at growth by grade level. This product allows us to take a look at how well students are growing relative to a national sample. So we're comparing ourselves to how students typically perform in this assessment. One of the challenges we face in other districts that are high achieving is that products like this, even though they're adaptive in nature, really struggle with showing growth. We've got so many kids that fall at or above the national 90th. Even an adaptive test like this is challenged in terms of showing kids that are hitting that ceiling or higher. We've got many students that fall, like I said before, above the 90th percentile rank. That's an inherent limitation of many assessment products. That kind of inhibits our ability to show higher numbers here because of so many students performing at that level. This is our race ethnicity group slide for growth in reading. You can see generally upward trends, fluctuation across each year, slight variation, a jump there a little bit with Hispanic Latino. I know people before this, or at least through notes, asked questions about whether or not all of this is reflected in Park. And we don't have the IAR data for the year we just completed. I don't want to say there's no rhyme or reason, but there's relative inconsistency in terms of how we perform on this and how we actually perform on IAR. And that depends on the subject, the grade level, and even the student group in many cases. So when we see variation in performance on performance series, I wouldn't necessarily assume it's reflected in IAR. In fact, if you look at our IAR data, we've grown tremendously over time, and our student groups have grown strongly as well. So kind of defying the state average, the proportion of students that are proficient for the last 4 years have gone up. And that same thing applies to growth as measured by formerly Park. This is our student group reading growth. Again, generally trending up, slight variation, but you can see that somewhere around 40 to 50% of students in these 3 groups are meeting or exceeding their growth targets in reading. This slide and the next few really focuses on math achievement, and you'll see the proportions of students that fall at or above the national 50th. That norming, I'm not exactly sure how to characterize or describe why that happened, to be honest. Couldn't get clarity from the vendor that provides this product. But again, there's no other evidence in this district that suggests we have some type of significant concern with respect to second grade math achievement. It just doesn't bear itself out anywhere else. I think it's a function of something around how that product was renormed. This is proportion at or above the national 50th, again, somewhat similar to reading in terms of the rank order. With respect to Asian, white, Hispanic, Latino, and African American Black, we see stable, maybe trending up, trending down. There's really, Hispanic, Latino seems to be trending up, but nothing really dramatic on this slide. This is our 3 student groups: English learners, special education, economic disadvantage. You can see the profile of achievement there. It's great to be in a place actually where such a high proportion of students are at or above the national 50. If you think about it, in many places, performing at this level and falling into some of those categories is remarkably depressed compared to our scores. These last 3 slides really focus on math growth. Again, it's by grade level. You see fluctuation and variation. You might notice that downward trend in 7th. That's also not reflected in our IAR and our Park data back to 2015. So not trying to throw anything or a vendor under the bus or anything, but one of the reasons I think we're moving forward, actually I don't think it, I know it, it's because we want to move forward with NWA map growth, is because we really want to know that what we're assessing is aligned to what's expected in the classroom around the Illinois learning standards. The race ethnicity slide reveals growth. You can see that these bars are generally in the same range. Some groups perform at a higher level of growth than others. Again, we have limitations because of how many kids that are so high achieving in the area of mathematics as well. And then this last slide is our English learner, special education, and economic disadvantage slide related to growth. Again, we've got many students, at least somewhere in the neighborhood of around 50%, meeting or exceeding growth standards annually. That's relatively stable across the last 5 years. A couple words about future directions in assessment. So we anxiously look forward to receiving the accountability data that we just collected this past spring. We did most of that work actually in April. We'll be receiving our Illinois Assessment of Readiness results. I was told on Friday somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 4 weeks. College Board data will be coming back at that same time. A little bit of a process of cleaning, verifying, and making sure it's legit. And then we'll dive into obviously sharing this information with principals and teams so that groups can revise or adjust their school improvement plans based on our progress or growth or performance. We are excited about transitioning to NWA MAP growth. I can't describe, in a nutshell, some of the advantages this product will provide. We'll be entering into the contemporary world of assessment and focusing really on trying to get information that's actionable instructionally for teachers. So this will be a refreshing change, and I think it really breathes new hope into pinpointing exactly what it is that students need, whether it's at the classroom level, the student level, the school level. The ESSA accountability metrics are continuing to evolve, and so that's something that's changing actually as we go through the summer. We're folding in more measures that weren't included last year as this sort of develops statewide, and of course we'll be reporting to you in October where we fall with respect to designation status like we did last fall. And then lastly, ultimately, I think the real purpose of all of this is to just continue to work on assessment literacy in this district, whatever level that is at, helping people understand the point of collecting information and data about students isn't really valuable unless there's action and it leads to something meaningful and significant. And so we want to continue to develop that. I think the implementation of NWA MAP growth will really allow for kind of a fresh start in that regard. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you had.
For that substantive report, and we're looking forward to October also. Questions from the board? Paul?
How do these numbers indicate how we're doing in terms of our gap closing efforts?
Generally, given the validity concerns I have about the assessment, because we're not convinced that what we're using to measure change or growth is really aligned with what we're doing in the classroom. So kind of given that big caveat, we're going in the right direction. And I base that more on our performance on IAR and formerly PARC. And hopefully we'll see that with IAR. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. But the ultimate external accountability measure reflects growth and change and improvement. I think adopting a new benchmark assessment system will help us kind of pinpoint and guide where we really need to focus our efforts instructionally, to work with students on closing the gap. Sure.
Okay. I loved what you said about information being actionable. I know that you've really been working hard to get this NWA map up so that we're able to have things that are more easily translatable between IAR and assessments, our growth assessments. Can you give us some examples of what you mean by actionable information and how that will work?
Sure. Some of the features of this product include what's called the Learning Continuum, a report that focuses on, at the skill and concept level, what is it in the classroom or at the student level, what is necessary, what's a child ready to learn. And so I think it gives us a better guide of skill-wise, concept-wise, where exactly do we need to begin. So it's not so much a reflection of what a child's unable to do, but sort of the philosophy behind the development of this is the intention was to provide information that talks about what are kids ready to learn, where are they, developmentally in terms of where have they shown readiness, the prerequisite skills to start and move forward. So that's relevant at the individual student level, of course, but also, when you're looking at maybe a classroom of 25, 30 students.
We're excited to see the continued progress coming from that. This is great to see areas where we need to work. I echo Paul's question in terms of the achievement gap. It's, an area for growth. Excited to see it going in the upward trend, but I am going to be delighted to be able to see, all of our educators have the tools that they need to be able to translate.
Right. I think we'll be on more solid ground. I know we will, just based on understanding of what this assessment is. We'll have more confidence in, this is really identifying our areas of need. It's accurately measuring with precision gaps, differences, needs. So, you kind of have to have a pretty good ruler to do this well. And so when you question the ruler, if the ruler is rubber or something, if you don't have a good measurement instrument, it's really difficult to talk about whether or not you're making meaningful or impactful change. So it'll be good. Good foundation. And the predictiveness, based on NWA map growth, this is built into this product, and we did this kind of the old-fashioned way with performance series. But the capacity to predict future performance on high stakes, not just internal accountability, but like ACT and SATs, it's a product feature that exists that's got, that's been developed by this company. It's not something we would have to do independently. Good thing.
All right, thank you very much, and we'll
Sure.
see you in October.
You're welcome.
Okay, I will move on to item 9.04, President's Report. I will report back an appreciation to the board for your participation on June 4th for our self-evaluation. As we had agreed, we have the following next steps identified, which I will report back. How to communicate and bring forward progress of goals, determining a dashboard with data points, clarity of our budget in relationship to our goals, the evaluation of other areas for board designees, a continued better focus on communication, the opportunity to hear more directly from a broader audience, and then we will be looking for continuing to schedule our next board governance review as we go forward annually. And we also reviewed our board agreements, which are posted on our website. So thank you to everybody for your great participation. That was a really meaningful session on June 4th. And we'll look forward to our next one, but also in making progress on our next steps. Okay, item 9.05, Board of Education reports. All right, I will move on then to discussion without action, and we do not have any items for discussion without action. So we will move to item 11, discussion with action, and that will be first, item 11.01, our 2019-2020 budget.
Okay, again, just as a reminder, these comments were made earlier this evening, but on May 6th, the administration presented to the Board of Education a tentative budget for review. At that meeting, the board also established this evening as the date for a public hearing, which we conducted earlier this evening. We also met with the Citizens Finance Advisors Committee in the middle of May to get their feedback and input in the development of the budget. The board conducted workshops on May 21st and June 3rd. Questions were provided with responses by administration. Those are posted publicly in board docs on the May 21st and June 3rd meeting. You have received public comment regarding the budget at the June 3rd meeting, and then also earlier this evening, which I know you'll take into consideration as you consider your vote. This evening, we are recommending to the Board of Education that you approve the attached the resolution which adopts the fiscal year 2020 tentative budget as presented and authorizes the administration to execute all necessary documents and file the same with all required governmental agencies. I'd be happy to take any questions from the Board of Education.
Thank you for that review. Questions or comments from the Board of Education? Okay, we already had our period of public and board comment. Just one additional item. I wanted to thank you for the work that you've done to, as we've looked at our achievement gaps, to continue to support that work and our new initiatives that will support that as well. So thank you for that inclusion of that and that strong area in the budget. Any other comments? Okay, then we will have a vote. I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve item 11.01, 2019-2020 budget.
A motion and a second are heard. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Leong,
Aye.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Yangrohr, Push,
Aye.
Kosminski.
Okay, the motion passes. All right, we will move to item 11.02, second reading of policy 5.125.
At the December 3rd, 2018 Board of Education meeting, administration presented a recommendation to the Board of Education regarding policy 5125, personal technology and social media usage and conduct. We didn't ask for action at that time as we awaited the approval by the Board of Education on May 3rd of an application to be used by staff to communicate with students. At the June 3rd meeting, we brought back to you the policy now for your action, or well, for your consideration. There was some discussion at that meeting about incorporating use of district-issued technology, but upon reflection, this particular policy deals as titled with personal technology and social media usage and conduct. policy governing use of district applications and district technology is covered in other policy throughout, so our recommendation is that you adopt the policy as presented. I'll ask our Chief Operating Officer, Bob Ross, if there's any additional information he would wish to provide.
Just that there have been a couple of minor changes that are in purple text that show up between the last meeting and this one.
I understand that as we educate our employees, we'll use both policies to let them know about the required actions with regard to the Remind app, et cetera. Okay, any questions or comments from the board? If there are no questions, I will entertain a motion.
I move approval of item, where's on the budget? Thank you, 11.02 as presented.
A motion and a second are heard. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Kosminski.
Aye.
Leong.
Aye.
Yangrohr. Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Cush.
Okay, the motion passes. We will move on to item 11.03, Health Insurance, Wellness Program and Rates.
Annually, our Health Insurance Committee provides recommendations for changes or updates to our health benefits. These have previously been discussed as allowed under the Open Meetings Act in closed session in regard to compensation. This evening, we bring them forward to you for formal action, which must be done in public session. Turn it over to Chief Human Resources Officer Carol Hetman for a couple of statements, and then we'll respond to any questions that you have.
Attached in board docs is a memo to the board recommending to extend the wellness strategy for 1 year and to implement 2 strategic opportunities for 2020. We also have attached 2 calendars, one for 2018 and one for 2019, which have been developed by the Benefits Committee. In extending the wellness strategy for 1 year, HR plans to educate staff about their employee benefits, as we feel that we need another year to concentrate on the great and various plans that we offer. The committee has voted to implement the one-time HSA contribution and the 1-month premium holiday for a shift from the full PPO network to the narrow network, either the Platinum or the Gold plan, and the committee is recommending that the board approve the 2 strategic initiatives that you see. Thank you.
Questions from the board? Just a note of appreciation to our insurance committee and the collaborative nature of that work, and that has really helped us to keep our benefits in check, the cost of providing those benefits in check. So a note of appreciation for the collaboration there. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve item 11.03 as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second are heard. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Yangrohr. Cush.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Leong.
Aye.
Kosminski.
Aye.
The motion passes. We will move on to item 11.04, Let's Talk.
Focus 2020 Strategic Blueprint Area 4 is to enhance communication and community relations. As part of your action earlier this evening approving the 2019-2020 budget, within that budget contained a line item for the K-12 Insight Let's Talk community engagement platform. This is a cloud-based platform that will be installed on our district website, which will provide us an opportunity to really actively listen to our community questions and concerns. As previously noted during the board self-evaluation, the importance on the improvement of communication and the opportunity to also engage more authentically and seamlessly with members of our community who do not have kids in our schools or do not access our services is a priority by the Board of Education. This will allow community members, including students, parents, staff, and others throughout our community to very easily visit the district homepage, click on an icon to bring them to a forum to engage in communication. It also provides analytics for us to be able to track the types of questions, the subject matters, and also to keep track of response from the district and response time. In addition, this platform will allow us to upgrade and improve safety reporting issues as well as our current TIP 203 process. So I don't know if Ms. Mandini, our Executive Director of Communications, has anything additional to add. Otherwise, we'd be happy to answer any questions, but we'd recommend you approve this contract, which has been reviewed by legal counsel.
I
just want to add that I think it will be wonderful for us. I think we've always been very diligent about tracking questions that come in and answering them in a timely fashion. But I like the idea that we're going to be able to keep track of it. I think it's going to hone our communication outward. We'll see what people are asking, what kind of questions, where are we maybe missing the mark on our communications, where we can enhance them. So I think it will really help us continue greatness.
For that. All right, questions from the board? Charles?
So, really applaud this initiative. So are we going to be seeing, or are there going to be regular report outs as to what some of the sentiment out in the community is on different things? Is this going to be a tool for us to utilize that as well, or to learn more about that as well?
I said we will be able to track all this the dashboard, so we will be able to take a look at where we're seeing the most upticks in questions, and especially because it will route to certain areas. So let's say enrollment is getting all the questions. Maybe we'll realize that we need to do a better job of communicating out to the community about key dates in that area. So I think we'll be able to really look at and report out some key milestones.
I'm going to only add to that that it also will allow us to really identify what are the key issues in our community based on the volume of questions, comments, or reach outs that we're getting from members of our community. Is this one or two individuals that we're just hearing from a lot, or is this from a large number of our constituents that we're hearing from?
Please.
So then, will there be kind of periodic, and again, not to be defined, I guess, to be defined by you, obviously, on an ongoing basis to kind of get a sense of, here's what we're seeing, here's what
Yeah,
we're
we'll
hearing.
see, kind of how we're able, as we evolve into the implementation, beginning at this building level, and then how it may roll out into some of our school sites. We'll be able to identify what types of information based on board goals and priorities are important to be communicated.
I just want to say I really appreciate the proactivity of really trying to develop a way to continue to hear from a broad audience, so that's a good thing.
I know we're referring to this as a cloud-based solution. Could you reassure the audience that other low-tech type access will be available, such as phone, mail, and so forth?
You want to talk to how when those come in, they could be entered into the platform?
Yeah, we could, for example, if you were to, we get a lot of outreach on Facebook messages, we can direct them right into that as well. And then if we get phone calls in, we can start a ticket for that call in, so I can make sure that it's being tracked along.
So this will not be the only way that you're able to communicate, but it'll be a platform that will be able to kind of serve as the warehouse for communication that does come in, and also improve the timeliness in which there's a response, because it'll allow us to assign response to the appropriate staff member more quickly and readily.
Some of those
Good questions. Any additional comments or questions? Okay. I will entertain a motion.
Approve item 11.04.
Second.
Motion and second are heard. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Kosminski.
Aye.
Leong.
Aye.
Yanglor. Kush.
Aye.
The motion passes. Okay, we have completed our discussion with action. We will move on to item 12, old business, and we do not have any old business. So we move to item 13, new business, and we have no new business. So we will go to item 14, upcoming events.
So I'll just simply note that in July, the Board of Education meets only once, and that date is July 15th, 2019, right here at the Public School Administration Center. August meetings are August 5th and August 19th. The board is invited to help us welcome new educators to our district on August 9th with our annual breakfast, and then a date to look forward to, only 2 months away. Classes begin for the 2019-2020 school year on August 15th, 2019.
I'm sure our students are eagerly waiting for that. Okay, moving on to item 15, adjournment. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second are heard. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.